Hello, everyone, and welcome to Firstpost America. We're live in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C., and over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the U.S. and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest global headlines. Vice President J.D. Vance reaches Israel as the fragile Gaza truce continues to hold. He'll meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, where they'll discuss regional security challenges. China calls on the U.S. to resolve trade issues through consultations based on equality, mutual respect, and reciprocity after President Trump threatened export controls on Boeing plane parts to Beijing. Japan's parliament elects Sanai Takahashi as the nation's first female vice prime minister. The 64-year-old conservative names just 2 women in her 19-member cabinet despite earlier pledges of Nordic levels of gender representation. And former French President Nicolas Sarkozy begins a 5-year prison sentence in Paris for criminal conspiracy, marking the first time a former leader of an EU state has served time behind bars. And the IMF says GDP growth has accelerated in Middle Eastern and Northern African countries this year despite global uncertainty and ongoing conflicts in the region. We begin in the U.S., where cities across the country witnessed massive No Kings demonstrations this weekend. From New York City's Times Square to the streets of Los Angeles, large crowds of protesters poured in on Saturday, holding signs with slogans like "Democracy, not monarchy," and "The Constitution is not optional." Thousands rallied in parks, outside courthouses, and even state capitals, decrying what they describe as a dangerous shift in American democracy. Organizers called the movement No Kings a symbolic rejection of what they see as a presidency that has overstepped democratic limits.
Today, in the year 2025, in this dangerous moment in American history, our message is exactly the same. No, President Trump, we don't want you or any other king to rule us. Thank you very much, but we will maintain our democratic form of society. We will not move toward authoritarianism in America. We, the people, will rule.
Demonstrators accused President Trump of undermining institutions, citing recent immigration raids, troop deployments in U.S. cities, and sweeping cuts to federal programs, particularly in health care.
We have fought too long and we fought too hard, and we're a democracy and we will definitely not tolerate a king.
No King's Day means that we have a quote-unquote president who is behaving like a ruler. He's punishing anybody who speaks up and speaks out against him. He's instilling fear in communities both inside the White House and in our neighborhoods. And his policies are that of a despot.
With more than 7 million people on hand, up from the 5 million in the No Kings rallies that took place over the summer, many of the demonstrations took on the air of street festival with marching bands, banners featuring the U.S. Constitution's "We the People" preamble, and even inflatable frog costumes, which have become a symbol of resistance that originated in Portland. Now, despite the passion and scale of the mobilization, authorities reported that the protests were largely peaceful with no major incidents or arrests in most major cities. This marks the third mass mobilization since President Trump's return to the White House, coming in amid the longest government shutdown that has already shuttered federal services. Ahead of the demonstrations, Trump allies accused the protesters of being linked with the far-left Antifa movement and condemned what they called the Hate America rally. President Trump, for his part, brushed off the criticism. In fact, in an interview with Fox News, he dismissed the idea that he sees himself as a monarch, saying,
"No, I mean, some people say they want to delay it for that. A king. This is not a king. You know, they're saying they're referring to me as a king. I'm not a king.
Just hours after the protest, President Trump posted an AI-generated video on Truth Social depicting himself flying a fighter jet with the words King Trump. The clip showed the plane dumping brown sludge over crowds of protesters. And the video includes a snippet from Kenny Loggins' song Danger Zone, notably used in the Tom Cruise classic Top Gun. Loggins condemned the unauthorized use of the music, calling it divisive and demanding its immediate removal. This is not the first time the president has in fact turned to artificial intelligence to shape his public image. Earlier this month, he shared a deepfake of Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer insulting his own party. Trump was also criticized for using deepfake videos and AI-generated images, shoring up support for winning the 2024 presidential campaign. And the protests swell and digital propaganda intensifies. America itself is at a crossroads between democratic dissent and digital distortion. And as millions take to the streets while the president turns to AI and spectacle, the divide between political reality and digital fiction grows sharper by the day. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with Donald Trump in Washington last week to discuss the war in Ukraine and potential military support, including the acquisition of Patriot air defense systems. The meeting focused on Ukraine's urgent need for advanced defenses against Russian ballistic missiles, particularly those targeting its energy infrastructure. Now, following the discussion, Zelensky announced that Ukraine and the U.S. are preparing a contract to acquire at least 25 Patriot systems. Each system costs around $1 billion, and Kyiv faces significant financial challenges in securing them.
We are working with the United States to ensure that Ukraine still can receive the necessary number of Patriot systems. This is not an easy task, but it is one of the security guarantees for Ukraine, and it will work in the long term.
The Ukrainian leader further said that the delivery would take years as Ukraine must wait in line behind other countries that have already signed contracts. However, he added that the White House could potentially adjust the production schedule if there's political will, and some European allies might even prioritize Ukraine or provide existing batteries.
In Washington, I spoke with defense companies that produce Patriots and other weapons we need. The willingness to work with Ukraine is fully sufficient. Ukraine is trusted. It is important that there be enough support for this at the political level in Washington.
Now, to finance the purchase, Ukraine is exploring multiple options. One is a proposed $140 billion euro or $162 billion reparations loan funded by frozen Russian assets currently under consideration by EU countries. Additionally, Ukraine is also participating in NATO's prioritized Ukraine requirements list, a mechanism that allows allies to buy U.S. weapons for delivery to Ukraine, which could include missiles for the Patriot systems. Now, even though President Zelensky described his meeting with President Trump as positive, the Ukrainian leader did express disappointment in not achieving his goal of securing the Tomahawk missiles for long-range strikes into Russia. Vice President Vance declared that in the end, President Trump would be making the final determination on the matter.
Well, the President of the United States is trying to ensure that America's security is taken care of first, and obviously that means that we need to have the critical weapon systems for our own military, for our own troops. So that's what the President is focused on. And as with all the decisions that he's made related to Russia and Ukraine, he's trying to bring peace because he thinks that's what's in America's best interest.
Now, despite the tension, President Zelensky's ambassador to the U.S. said the meeting laid a solid foundation for future diplomatic efforts, highlighting Ukraine's reliance on U.S. leadership and international support to end the war. In fact, leaders of European nations, including Britain, France, Germany, and the European Union, issued a joint statement setting up support for Ukraine and President Trump's efforts to end the fighting. President Zelensky also said he would be ready to attend a proposed Trump-Putin summit in Budapest if invited, signaling Kyiv's willingness to engage in multilateral diplomacy.
We want peace. Putin doesn't want. That's why we need pressure on him. We understand what we need to push Putin to negotiation table. And as I said previously, so we are ready to speak in any kind of format, bilateral, trilateral, doesn't matter, just peace. This is important.
While the White House meeting advanced discussions on air defense systems, key questions remain over Ukraine's ability to finance the Patriots, the timing of deliveries, potential concessions in any negotiated ceasefire. As both leaders navigate these complex issues, the outcome of President Trump's proposed talks with Putin could prove pivotal for the next stage of the conflict. And now moving to South America, Bolivia is poised for a major political shift after centrist Rodrigo Paz won the country's presidential runoff, ending nearly 2 decades of leftist rule. Paz, a 58-year-old senator from the Christian Democratic Party, defeated his conservative rival and will take office on November 8th, inheriting a fragmented legislature and an economic crisis.
Thank you. Today democracy won. Today Bolivia won, and we're just going to think about Bolivia. Enough of hatred, racism, division. One Bolivia.
The victory marks a historic change for Bolivia, which has been governed almost continuously by the leftist movement since 2006. The leftist party, founded by former President Evo Morales, had strong support from the country's indigenous majority, but voter frustration over economic stagnation and shortages helped propel Paz's rise. In August's first round of voting, the party's support collapsed amid soaring inflation, falling gas exports, and fuel scarcity.
I hope this government is good and not like before. I have hope that everything will be fine this time and we won't suffer like before. That would be all.
Now, Paz's moderate platform has aimed to balance continuity with reform. Speaking from the Bolivian city of La Paz on election night, Paz said, quote, "We must open Bolivia to the world," signaling a departure from the isolationist policies of the previous administration.
We have extended a hand to all political forces in parliament because I believe the mandate of the Bolivian people is not confrontation. It is not violence in the streets, but rather the opposite, to restore lost institutional order, and in that, the National Assembly has a fundamental role.
Now, it turns out the key to Paz's campaign was his running mate, Edmund Lara, a former police officer who gained fame on TikTok for exposing corruption. Lara's populist appeal helped connect Paz with younger and working-class voters. Yet while the presidential win was decisive, Paz's party fell short of a legislative majority, winning 49 of 130 lower house seats and 16 of 36 Senate seats, slightly ahead of the former president's party coalition. Now, this will force Paz to negotiate alliances to pass reforms.
Agreements will be made transparent. The problem with those agreements was that they weren't transparent, and what the Bolivian people want is transparency. You know that part of our strong criticism of the 20 years of MAS rule is that geopolitically and geoeconomically, Bolivia today has no specific weight in the international arena.
Bolivia's economic challenges are immediate. The country faces high inflation, long fuel queues, and dwindling foreign reserves. Now, Paz has outlined measures to address fuel shortages through deferred payment agreements and plans to phase out universal fuel subsidies, targeting support only to vulnerable groups, while larger industries pay market rates. In fact, a key priority for Paz will be restoring ties with the United States. Morales had expelled U.S. diplomats and severed relations over allegations of interference. Now, Paz, on the other hand, has pledged a rapprochement, announcing discussions with U.S. officials and plans for a $1.5 billion economic cooperation deal to secure fuel supplies.
Spoken with the U.S. Deputy Secretary Christopher Landau, as we publicly stated, about the efforts so that, together with friendly countries like Brazil, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Argentina, they can collaborate starting from the 9th of November, based on the country's need to resolve the long lines we have due to the hydrocarbons issue. The process is ongoing. We are coordinating in the best way to ensure the arrival of that much-needed hydrocarbon linked to gasoline and diesel.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio welcomed Paz's victory, calling it a transformative opportunity, while President Donald Trump also sent congratulations. And despite the optimism surrounding his election, doubts still remain. So as Bolivia prepares for its new leadership, the international community watches closely. And with a fragile economy, a divided legislature, and the challenge of rebuilding foreign relations, Paris faces a delicate balancing act. And for our next story, we turn to Paris, the city of art, romance, and now a real-life crime thriller. 4 masked thieves, a ladder, a motorbike escape, and a 7-minute window. That's all it took to pull off the Louvre's boldest burglary in years. As tourists lined up for selfies with the Mona Lisa, a gang of thieves decided Napoleon's jewels needed a change of address. Tonight we bring you the story of the Louvre's heist of 2025, complete with drama, diamonds, and just the right amount of French flair.
Move over, Mona Lisa. There is a new masterpiece in Paris, and it's called the Great Louvre Heist of 2025. On October 19th, as tourists queued for a selfie with Da Vinci's famous lady, 4 audacious thieves decided that Napoleon's jewels needed a new home, preferably their own pockets. Sporting balaclavas and apparently a flair for dramatic entrances, the gang pulled up along the Seine. And in a scene that could double as a Hollywood stunt, they used a vehicle-mounted extendable ladder to reach the 2nd floor Apollo Gallery. Angle grinders in hand, they were in and out within 7 minutes to be exact.
It's deeply sad. And I mean, yes, one might think, well, these are jewels, Empress's jewels after all. France is a republic. But we would be wrong to say that, because it was the republic that wanted, by creating the Louvre, that masterpieces, as they were called, of human genius could be presented to all citizens. So in reality, it was not the deceased empresses, Josephine and Eugenie, nor their families, who were robbed, but the French citizens.
Now here's what they took from the museum. 8 priceless pieces, including necklaces, earrings, and a diadem with nearly 2,000 diamonds. And a sapphire tiara once gracing France's last queen, Marie-Amélie. But hey, even the best thieves aren't perfect. They dropped the Empress Eugenie's crown, which has 1,354 diamonds, 56 emeralds. Talk about selective shopping. After the incident, dozens of tourists flocked to the site of the incident.
I would like to understand for myself how it was done, how they were able to actually put a small van in a freight elevator and climb up. Well, it all happened very quickly, of course, but I wanted to see the site with my own eyes.
We came to do some shopping, and then we figured, why don't we just go see what happened? Because we found out yesterday when it happened that people broke into the Louvre, and we were just intrigued by what it was.
Alarms blared, guards scrambled, and the thieves made a stylish exit on motorbikes. They even left behind some of the equipment used in the heist. They also tried a bit of pyrotechnics by attempting to torch their getaway vehicle. Memes have officially broken the internet after the Louvre heist, with one user marveling that the thieves didn't even wake up at dawn, proving even French thieves have better work-life balance than the rest of us. Another joked that stealing from the Louvre is robbery, but stealing from the British Museum must be re-robbery. While someone else admitted they can't hear about the Apollo Gallery raid without imagining the Ocean's 11 theme music playing in the background. Parisian sarcasm made its debut, too. One user quipped that at the Louvre, jokes come first, riot second, and tears later, while another reassured that the Mona Lisa is still smiling and tourists can still queue. Someone else wisely suggested Romans were onto something with geese as guards. Picture 50 honking sentinels on balconies, tougher than any glass case. The Louvre remained closed on October 20th as investigators combed the gallery. The French police have now stepped up the hunt for thieves as over 60 investigators work on the case. And Paris debates whether museum security needs a glow-up. Meanwhile, the thief's audacity is being immortalized in GIFs and memes.
Apple is making history once again. On Monday, its shares soared to an all-time high, pushing the company to a staggering $3.9 trillion valuation, just a step away from the elusive $4 trillion mark. The surge comes on the back of iPhone 17's blockbuster launch, outselling last year's model by 14% in the U.S. and China. Now, according to latest data, the base model is flying off shelves in China. Meanwhile, the iPhone 17 Pro Max dominates demand in the U.S., boosted by carrier subsidies. Apple's rebound has stunned markets and investors alike, turning months of uncertainty into a whirlwind of momentum. Our next report brings you the details.
Apple is biting back. And it's not just with a new gadget, but with a number that's shaking Wall Street. On Monday, the tech giant stock didn't just rise, it soared to an all-time high, up more than 4%. Hitting a record $262.9 a share. That surge pushed Apple's value to nearly $3.9 trillion, putting it a whisper away from the $4 trillion mark. The iPhone maker is now the second most valuable company in the world, just behind NVIDIA. And the fuel behind this meteoric rise? The iPhone 17. Fresh market data shows Apple's newest iPhone 17 lineup is off to a flying start. It outsold last year's iPhone 16 by 14% in its first 10 days across the US and China, two markets that together define Apple's fortunes. In China, the base iPhone 17 is leading the charge. Sales are up nearly a third compared to last year. In the US, the iPhone 17 Pro Max is dominating demand, with carriers boosting subsidies to attract premium customers. And in a surprise twist, the iPhone Air has outshone the iPhone 16 Plus, emerging as the new fan favorite. Analysts say Apple finally struck the right balance: power, polish, and price. The base model offers a stronger chip, higher storage, a brighter display, and a better selfie camera, all for the same price as last year's model.
Buying the iPhone 17 is a no-brainer, especially when you throw channel discounts and coupons into the mix. Simply put, it provides extremely good value for money, and Chinese consumers are rewarding Apple for that.
It's a stunning turnaround for Apple. Just months ago, the company was facing its toughest test in years: falling sales, high tariffs, and a growing challenge from Chinese brands like Huawei. Investors were nervous, the stock was stagnant, and confidence was fading. Then came Apple's counterstrike. A $100 billion investment pledge to the U.S., a high-profile visit from CEO Tim Cook to China, and now the iPhone 17, reigniting demand in both its biggest markets. The payoff has been swift. Apple shares have climbed 36% in the past 6 months. The stock is now trading almost 11% higher than it was a year ago at this time, and investment banks are rushing to upgrade their outlook. They say that the iPhone Air's instant sellout in China could push the stock even higher. For now, the momentum is unmistakable. The iPhone 17 has given Apple something it badly needed: a hit. A product that's not just selling, but sending the stock soaring. But here's the bigger picture. As Apple edges closer to the $4 trillion mark, the story is bigger than just the stock. It's a spectacle of demand, desire, and numbers dancing higher than anyone imagined. Every sale, every share, every milestone adds to a momentum that feels unstoppable. At this altitude, the market itself seems to hold its breath, watching a climb that turns ambition into awe and possibility into performance.
That's going to do it from us today. And from all of us here at Firstpost America, we thank you so much for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks, everyone, for watching.